Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. 4 games in the book, 4 wins, none of which was a surprise. And the season's about to get real. Although I know I have people snickering already because they saw some of that 63-10 game last week, and they're saying that Illinois is not for real either. We'll talk about that. But guys, USC is 4-0. They won 4 games that they should have won. This one was a little bit closer in the third quarter than it should have been, but ultimately it was never in doubt. So let's start with a Michigan State recap, and then we'll spend substantial time on Illinois because this Illinois game is it's not the season, but you win that one, you set yourself up pretty well. So okay, let's talk about Michigan State, and let's start with what went right. And I'm not going to give you any more direction than that. Mark Holken, tell me, when I say what went right, what jumps out at you about that Michigan State game?
What jumps out is the play calling from Lincoln Riley and how well Jaden Mayava executed. It's hard to say he's played a perfect season, but he's played a nearly perfect season so far. He's making the right decisions. He's knowing when to keep the ball, when to run. He's finding the right guy to throw the ball to. He's not forcing any bad throws. Eric, I think, mentioned in one of his stories, you're not going to, hold it over his head for those few tip passes he had at the line of scrimmage. Stuff happens. But I love the fact that Lincoln Riley has fallen in love with the run game again. He's got an infatuation with his tight ends. I think they ran the ball 11 more times than they threw it against Michigan State, which is a great sign. If there was just that one little, I guess, blip in his timeline where, Waymon Jordan ran for 35 yards and they decided, well, we're going to pass it for the next 3 or 4 plays in a row rather than just keep doing what they're doing. But that's what stood out, was how well he was able to execute the offense. He kept the Spartan defense off balance most of the time. Watching Lincoln Riley, and I know he said he never lost his mojo, but you can see a difference this year in his play calling and the way the offense is executing. I to say otherwise, I think would just be naive.
All right, so Mark, you set the table up with 2 different issues. We're gonna talk about those. Greg, I want to start with you. Mark is talking about play calling, about Lincoln Riley falling in love with the run game again. I think USC somewhere near 57% run to 43% pass on the season. The truth is, so far this year, Lincoln Riley could have called any assortment of plays he wanted, and that offense is probably rolling. But this is a good sign, is it not? Lincoln Riley excited about the run game, and fans excited about the run game because you have guys running through big holes and breaking tackles. You probably feel pretty good about that, don't you, Greg?
Absolutely. And I think every USC fan probably feels pretty good about it, especially in the fourth quarter when they had to really keep the ball, run clock. It wasn't so much that, how much did we win by or so on and so forth, is what did we do to preserve the victory so it didn't turn into a disaster at the end. Now, I will say that I never thought that they were going to lose, but I was concerned that they could put themselves in a position to be vulnerable. And you never know because they were on the road. But all in all, I thought that Lincoln Riley, I can't say that Lincoln Riley is a great believer in the run game, even though he's running the ball, in a way that's certainly productive. No question about that. I think he understands what it takes for him to win and where he's at and what league they're in. And he can't make another big, repeat of last year, and he knows that. And I think that he's doing stuff to make it, not to make me happy or you happy or Trojan fans happy. This is what it takes to win. Okay. And if you look at the teams that really win at the highest level, they're able to do what SC is currently doing right now. And hopefully, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, hopefully the defense will continue to improve as well.
Yeah. So USC, of course, was at home against Michigan State, but you're right that this is 2 weeks in a row now, Greg. We're in the fourth quarter. when USC needed to move the ball and needed to take some time off the clock, that Lincoln Riley was not afraid to give it to the backs. And that's something we didn't see last year. We're seeing a lot more of it this year. Eric, let's stick on this theme because it's easy to call running plays when you're averaging 8 yards a carry, or you'd think so. Although there were games last year where USC averaged 8 yards a carry, and Lincoln found it very difficult to call run plays. But so far, USC really hasn't been challenged, right? I mean, they haven't been challenged. I don't think they've had to wash Mayava's jersey yet, and the running backs have, as good as they are, they've had huge holes to run through. So, do we know that Lincoln Riley has changed from his approach last year, or has it simply been easy for him because they haven't faced a defense that, despite Michigan State's gaudy rush defense numbers coming into the game, they haven't faced anybody who can really slow them down yet? So, have we learned anything, or are we still hoping that he's changed his spots?
They lost to Maryland last year. They lost to Maryland last year. Like that, when there's a bunch of they haven't played anyone, I get that, and that's true. They lost to Maryland. That Maryland team, I don't even know if they showed up for a game the rest of the season. Like that was not a good team.
Yeah.
And they lost last year. So I'm looking at it, some of it from there, right? You're capable. Like Purdue's not good. I think they'll beat somebody. Michigan State is going to beat somebody, right? Like you still had to show up and play and beat those teams. So I'm not gonna erase everything that they did. Now you're gonna have to up your game against a lot of these teams coming up. But I think you can take some things away from the way Lincoln Riley has approached having 2 tight ends on the field, having 2 running backs on the field a bunch, wanting to go to the run when it felt like, what was the Wayne Jordan Wildcat pickup, right? Third and 5, 3rd and 6, something like that. You're running, it feels like, I should look at the numbers before I say this, but it feels like that sort of 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 thing has been more of a rundown for them this year. Maybe not a majority overpass, but more run than it has been the last couple years. And so when that feels like the philosophy, that's tough to set that up for a team probably preseason and then play it out the first third of the year. And then all of a sudden, hey, no, never mind. We're not going to do that. Now we're going to throw the ball. So I have some faith that that's the feel of the team. You can tell Lincoln Riley feels so much better about the offensive line, about the tight ends, about the running backs this year. Like that, all the components of the running game. I think if it looked like this a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that would have been, we talked about it when Lincoln Riley came in. Yeah, it's air raid, but it's a Lincoln Riley air raid. There's a ton of run to it.
Yep.
If you're not comfortable with that, you're not just going to run into a wall over and over and over. You're going to sort of use what you have. So I think he's wanted it to look like this since he got here. And now he has sort of what you can do. So I'm pretty confident that this is the feel, and this is at least what they're going to try to do the rest of the season until somebody forces them out of it, which that hasn't been what we've seen from him. Certainly last year, that wasn't what we saw.
Yeah, agreed. And Michigan State is not a great football team, but Michigan State has some good players. They have a really good coach. It's not, beating them is not the same as beating Helton's team, right? It's not the same thing. That's a legitimate Big Ten team that wasn't great last year, but you're playing against guys who belong in the Big Ten, and what we've seen is not only is Lincoln Riley comfortable running the ball the way we saw him run it at Oklahoma, but he seems to have reason to have that confidence because you have running backs who can make people miss, who are running through arm tackles, who are finding the holes. And frankly, you're not getting the mistakes with the offensive line that you would have seen last year. I don't think Michigan State had a single tackle for loss in that game. And this is a USC team that I think has 4 games and has punted 4 times. I mean, even if you're not playing great players, if you're having missed assignments, if you're having mental errors, then you're going to get stopped sometimes, and you're going to have some tackles for loss where plays get blown up in the backfield. We're just not seeing that right now, which is all a very good sign, obviously. Let's talk about Mayava. That's the other thing that Mark mentioned. I think we can all agree that Jaden Mayava has been great so far. He has been. There's no reason to say otherwise. He's getting the ball out. He has good touch on his passes. He's had very few bad decisions. He hasn't been pressured. We're going to see what happens when he is. But there was one moment in the game, and Greg, I'll go back to you on this. USC had a defensive breakdown that gave up a touchdown. They didn't fumble deep in their own territory. And all of a sudden, a game that looked like a blowout is a 7-point game. Jaden Mayava has the ball. He's getting pressured. And he finds a way, Caleb Williams-like, to escape, make a play down the left sideline, pick up a first down. And that was sort of the point at the game where you look at it and say, okay, that looks like a different Jaden Mayava. That's a guy who was the moment was not too big for him. He stayed composed. He made a play with his feet, and from there on, the offense did whatever it wanted to do. Is that at least some indication, Greg, that we've seen a different Jaden Mayava? And is there anything else that we've seen this year that would lead us to believe that this is not the guy from last year who made some nice plays and they would make some bonehead plays, but is actually a guy who's starting to figure out the position? What do you think?
No, I think I think that a lot of the credit has to go to Lincoln Riley, to be honest with you. His track record with quarterbacks is pretty obvious. And the question is how coachable is Mayava? And this week, Riley said that he's incredibly coachable. And when I heard that, I said, okay, now, because the strength of the schedule is coming up, beginning this Saturday, regardless of what Illinois succumbed to Indiana. The bottom line is, from here on out, it's really going to get more pressure. As SC continues to win, which we all hope that they will, there's going to be more talk about the college football playoffs. They'll go from in the discussion to dark horse, and if they continue to win, they'll go from dark horse to are they going to make the Big Ten championship game, and can they get into the playoff, having appeared in there? So I think that Mayava, when I listened to him talk in the media day right before the season, it really struck me as he had it all together. He struck me as someone who says, I'm the quarterback. I don't have to worry about a lot of things. And that is such a big deal. I know Matt Leinart became a tremendous quarterback. Obviously, once he got the position and he didn't have to worry about trying out, and so to speak. And look how he, jumped up in the years that he was the quarterback. I think that the thing about Mayava, he is yet to throw an interception that could really affect the team. And he's had a couple that he got away with. There's no doubt about it. I think Culkin sat there and said he hasn't, he's been really great. But, there's been a couple of moments that, I don't want to say Lady Luck worked for him, but, something negative didn't happen, which is good. But, these next games at Illinois, at Notre Dame, at Oregon, they're going to test him. The schedule to me is really a schedule that really fits what the growth of Mayava is. It kind of start off really, I don't want to use the word easy because you still have to win and you still have to hit. But if you look at, it's like a step, and this is the next big step, Illinois. So we'll see if you continue to make the big steps. Because we know after Illinois, win or lose, they're going to play Michigan. And, that's going to be a big game, too. That'll be even a bigger game than Illinois, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of other things, guys. The offensive line looked fantastic again, and they look fantastic despite the fact that USC lost Elijah Page, its left tackle, relatively early in the game. And if you weren't paying attention to the numbers, you wouldn't have noticed a change in that offensive line's performance. Eric, let's talk about the O-line a little bit, and we'll talk about possibly losing Elijah Page for next week in just a bit. But what did you see Saturday from these guys other than dominance? I mean, is there anything we've seen so far that would lead us to be worried? Because I'm waiting for it.
It's what we haven't seen that would lead us to be worried, right? It's the opponent having an elite edge rusher, which is what crushed them last year. I mean, crushed them. And it's right. Mason Murphy's gone, but we didn't. The guys who have played, Tobias Raymond, Elijah Page, Justin Tanu, they didn't handle them either. So that's the concern. And you're going to get one this weekend. And so I don't know if it's, maybe I just said concern, but I don't know if it's full concern, but it's certainly like on the radar of, that's not a box that you've checked yet in terms of, yeah, everything's good, we're good to go. So that to me is the one thing to watch. Tobias Raymond, right? Great at guard, moves out to tackle, great at tackle. Micah Banuelos jumps in, plays right guard a couple games ago, plays left guard. Now, like the versatility of the line and everything you heard about, hey, we like who we have. We don't need to go out and get a bunch of starters and fill them in and all that stuff. And I think you were okay to be, are you sure? Are you sure? But like to go get John Ray Reed and not need him at this point, I mean, that to me kind of speaks volumes about what you had. The fact that DJ Wingfield hasn't really come up at all as oh man, imagine if they, had him. So, and no slight to those two, but I think you've built a pretty good offensive line. There's still, like I said, there's still empty boxes out there that you have to check. And a really strong interior going up against them and a really good edge rusher is still out there that you have to deal with. Now, we've seen pretty good protection from the running backs, and you're going to have a lot of two tight ends out there, and you can do a lot of different stuff with that. So I think you're going to get more help this year against that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's nothing with the offensive line where you would say, oh, I've seen this and it's a problem. It's just, as of yet, what you haven't seen them have to deal with.
Yeah, they've met every challenge. I'm not sure how challenging most of them were, but they've met every challenge with ease. Really, they've completely dominated in all aspects of the game 4 straight weeks. So, yeah, there may be some questions unanswered. It's going to get more difficult this Saturday. It's going to get a lot more difficult against Michigan, but pretty good. Speaking of pretty good, Micaiah Lemon still plays for USC, and turns out he's not bad. Micaiah, no Jacoby Lane, but Micaiah and the 4 of us would have been a decent receiving core. He's pretty special, Mark. I mean, is it too early to start talking about Micaiah Lemon in the same sentences as Drake London and Amon-Ra and Robert Woods? I mean, he's starting to creep up to a position where he looks like one of the elite guys. And USC's had a bunch of them over the last 30 years, but he's starting to look like one of those guys, isn't he?
Yeah. I don't know. What else are you looking for, Chris? Is it too soon? No. It's like, put him in that conversation. I don't think there's much left for him to prove. I mean, can he continue doing it throughout the rest of the season? Sure. I mean, that's really the only box to check. And I think if you're looking for something to nitpick Micaiah Lemon about, it's on the special team side. He hasn't really had that impact yet where he's going to break one, where you're saying, all right, just don't even kick it to him. There's nothing to complain about with Micaiah Lemon. He will make he can run any route. His footwork is fantastic. You can run him over the middle. You can run him out of the slot. You can make him run those long drag routes into the corner of the end zone. he can do whatever you need him to do. So you can double team him and it doesn't matter because he's still finding ways to get open, and he's making the rest of the wide receivers and the tight ends become a more integral part of the offense as well. So yeah, I guess if there's one player you do not want to lose on the offense this year besides your quarterback, it's probably going to be him. He's dependable. You know what you're going to get from him game in, game out. It's not just making the catch, it's the yards after the catch. It's how tough he is. He's not something you have to worry about. You know, you're not going to wonder how come he's not playing. Even if he is playing, he'll play with an injury. He knows how to play hurt. And I think people need to understand the difference between playing hurt and playing through an injury. Micaiah Lemon is just the guy who he wants to play every Saturday. He wants to play every play. So you need as many of those types of players on your team as you can get.
You know, it's funny, you go back 13 months, and Micaiah Lemon is the fourth name that gets mentioned with the U.S. wide receiver room, right? You'd have everybody's talking about Zach Branch, everybody's talking about Jacoby Lane because of the circus catches, Deuce Robinson because of the length and the speed. And Micaiah was sort of the forgotten guy. And now you look at it and say, Jacoby Lane's a really good football player. But you look at that foursome and you say, who's the guy that you know every single week will show up and be a huge problem? It's Micaiah Lemon. And other than Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, I'm not sure there's anybody in the country that I'd rather have but him.
I don't think they've even tapped into Micaiah's full potential. We saw that jet sweep for an easy touchdown against Michigan State. I mean, there's so much they can do with his athleticism. I'm looking forward to Lincoln Riley, getting deeper into his brain, opening up that playbook even more, and see we know we can also throw the ball. We saw him do that in the past. So yeah, get the ball in Micaiah's hands. Good things typically happen.
Yeah. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. I think you could say it was a pretty good performance from the USC defense. Some really good things. They should not have given up 31 points to Michigan State, right? They should not have given up 31 points to Michigan State. So let's start there. Eric, let's start with the positive. What did we see from the defense on Saturday that makes us feel good about the rest of the schedule?
The defensive line, again, it's just not going to get pushed around, right? Week to week. There was some stuff, right? Michigan State is that run game is so good at taking advantage of any cutback lane and that kind of thing. Like, they got washed a little bit. There were a couple plays where an edge guy got caught inside and didn't set it hard enough on the outside. There's a few things that are there. The fact that those are surprises now is nice, right? Not just, okay, who's going to be the guy, right? Who's going to be the guy out of his gap? Who's not going to set the edge? So, and you started to see more of that last year, that it was sort of buttoned up a little bit more. You're seeing that a lot more now, and you're getting more just explosive plays where the best guy and probably the best two or three guys on that play are USC defensive linemen, right? And Jakeem Stewart is flashing in, and you got guys that are just making really good one-on-one football IQ types of plays that just shut an offense down, right? You get one really negative play on first down, and that's the drive. And so I think that's where you're seeing a better USC defense. There's a lot. I mean, and the players say this, the coaches say this too. Every time there's a positive, hey, there's a lot to still work on. There's a lot to still get better on. It's not even the defensive line, even the best players on the defensive line. That's not a finished product by any stretch. But you're putting guys out there that now suddenly offenses are going, oh my gosh, there's a guy there we got to figure out. There's a guy over here we got to figure out. And it's making it easier on everybody up front because you're getting a ton of single blocks and you're getting a ton of space to be able to kind of work your one-on-one stuff. So that's what stands out, is that every week USC is going to roll a defensive line out there that gives you a shot in every game.
So, Greg, last week it was Floyd Bicard getting a couple tackles for loss. It's sort of his breakout game. He gets some publicity in the media. This week, Jakeem Stewart, The expectations for Stewart coming into the season were so high. This is somebody who was so highly recruited. USC, I think, probably wins a pretty big bidding war to get him. And yet a lot of fans saying reasonably enough that, guys, relax. He's coming out a year early. He's barely played football in high school. He played one varsity season in high school. You can't expect a true freshman with that level of inexperience to come right in and make plays right away. Well, I don't know, guys. It looks like this is a guy who can make plays right away. Greg, Jakeem Stewart's starting to open some eyes, is he not?
Well, I'll tell you what, he is so quick off the snap of the ball, so quick. It's almost like he's in the backfield before the play even really rolls to play action or whatever you want. And my feeling is he has the potential, of course. You have to have potential to do certain things, but he has the potential to really, if he's at SC for 3 years, be one of the greats. He could be one of the greats. It's hard. I mean, Leonard Williams was great. Okay. But I think this kid's got even a quicker step than Williams does. And he pursues the ball. The one thing that I think that I saw with not only him as much, but he didn't play as much as some of the others, is to keep their eye on whoever has the ball and pursue him to take him down. The aggressiveness was great, but I thought there was times when they got close, and I think if they would have put out even more, they could have gotten some more. But as far as Stewart goes, it's gonna be interesting because he's gonna make even more plays and more big plays, and then people are gonna say, when's he gonna start? I think they're bringing him along slowly, but I think that he's very quick to advance to the next level. And I'm excited, not by what I'm seeing today on him, which is exciting, but where he'll be around the 8th game, the 9th game, because he could be a difference maker in some of the really big games.
Yeah, this is a guy. You talk about that first step. I mean, it's almost Mike Patterson like how quickly he can defeat the block, how quickly he gets off the ball. The difference is that he's substantially bigger than Mike Patterson was. And this is a guy who's 290 or so right now. In 2 years, he's going to be playing at 330, 325. Just a fantastic looking prospect. And we don't know if he's going to be great because that's going to require staying healthy. It's going to require him really wanting it and working hard. But all indications are that this is a guy who does want it and does work hard. Mark?
There's 2 times so far this year where he's almost taken the handoff from the opposing quarterback. I mean, that's how quickly that first step is and how quickly he's getting into the backfield. You usually see that kind of timing from a veteran player, but he's already got that part of the game down. I think where we need to start throwing some flowers around are to the veteran defensive ends. We've seen Braylon Shelby really develop. All of a sudden, this is a Braylon Shelby everybody's been waiting for. He's showing off that athleticism, what he's so good at. Anthony Lucas has become the player everybody's wanted him to be. Cam Crawford, I got to make sure we get that name in there correctly. He's coming along, but then you don't even bring up the name Jade Abasiri that much. You don't bring up the name Devin Tompkins. These guys are doing the job. I mean, this defensive line, it's crazy, but it is. When was the last time you could say it is the strength of this program right now?
Yeah, and when you look at the number of these guys who were young, I mean, Crawford is a true sophomore, and Bacard and Jakeem Stewart, true freshmen of a series, a true sophomore. You look at the recruits they have lined up to come in next year, including the kid from Texas, Winfield, who looks like an absolute monster. And you look at it and say, okay, USC looks like they're going to have some ridiculous defensive lines in the coming years, and this one's going to get better. You know, Lincoln said in an interview after practice that said this defensive line is going to get better, especially as you get deeper into the season and attrition starts to take its effect on teams because offensive lines are going to be beat up And even if we have some injuries, we can still roll out a bunch of guys in light of all the depth we have. And that's the nice thing when you take Devin Tompkins out, who's a good player and is making plays, and the offensive line can't relax because instead you're bringing in Jakeem Stewart. I mean, that's the position that Alabama and Georgia have been in for many years. It's the position that USC was in when they were great. It helps. Now,
I mean, it's true 10 deep, right? It's 10 deep across the line, and then you start throwing in Eric Gentry can rush. You can bring safeties down. Like there are, and that's to Mark's point about the defensive ends playing really well. How much of that is the interior, right? Like teams have to focus on that. Again, we talk about the transfer portal guys from last year, where great effort, 110% team captain type guys. You didn't need to be always worried about the pass rush up the middle last year. You got to figure that out now, and that's helping the guys on the outside.
yeah, no doubt. Look, this is a very aggressive defensive front too. Sometimes to their detriment, right? I mean, you will see edge guys get too far upfield and not be able to make a play in the run game. You will see guys get upfield and have creases. So, and you're going to continue to see that. You're going to continue to see an aggressive defensive line that sometimes will give up a play. But it's also a group that will be all over you, and it's going to take a really good offensive line to protect the quarterback. And it's hard not to feel good about that group. Look, Aiden Childs is a pretty good athlete, and there were times when he got outside, probably because the pass rush was a little too aggressive, and they were letting him get outside contain, and they got hurt a couple of times by that. But the complaint I had early in the year, where you're not seeing a lot of one-on-one beats with these guys, I can't say that anymore. You're actually seeing a lot of that now. And we'll talk about Illinois in a minute, but you're going to see that Saturday. Go ahead, Mark.
I think there was just one bad hiccup against Michigan State. It was that goal line play where they had him behind, in the backfield, and somehow they didn't get him wrapped up, and he was able to spin away, walk in for that touchdown. Other than that, they contained him really well for the most part.
Yeah, they beat up on him enough that there were a couple of times late in the game where he missed guys he probably shouldn't have missed, and that happens when you hit a quarterback a lot. And they were getting after him. Eric Gentry is still great, right? He's exactly the guy we want him to be. He's making plays every week. I don't know that we're getting the sort of production that we're going to need from that other linebacker spot yet, and that's something to watch, because it's one thing to play Michigan State and not be getting much from that other linebacker spot. It's a different thing to be playing Michigan or Oregon and not be getting much. Greg, how worried should we be about the spot that's usually occupied by Desmond Stevens? Desmond has made some plays. He's had some tackles. It's not that. But he looks like a guy who's pretty unsure of himself and is not diagnosing plays quickly and is not getting to the hole quickly. What is this something that we need to be concerned about? Are you seeing improvement? What do you think?
I look at him as a young player, a player that has not been in this position, especially where we're at. And he's really a good athlete. He's really a good athlete. And in talking with him, he's got a lot of brain power in there. So my feeling is it's not where he is today, per se. It's where he's at in that 7th and 8th game. When he's at Notre Dame, it may be Michigan that all of a sudden, they go at him. I would be surprised if he doesn't make another couple of steps up his potential staircase, because I think he's just too good an athlete, and he's learning. And let's face it, Eric Gentry's been, how long has he been a Trojan now? And starting, I mean, he's gotten hurt, no doubt about it. But he's been there enough, and he's a smart player as well. But you know what? I figured that it's the price you pay when you're starting basically a young player who's getting extended amount of time, and everyone's looking for things. I will say this: I'm a lot more concerned about the corners than I am about Desmond Stevens.
We're going to talk about We're gonna talk
I know
about.
we'll get to that. I'm not gonna get into it because I'll let you take us down that path. But I think that to have patience with Desmond Stevens would be a good thing. And I don't know who do you replace him with that you're going to get bigger production out of. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you have some other, Jaden Walker has flashed, and Elijah Newby's a great athlete, but Desmond Stevens is a great athlete. Who do you have that you can plug in there who's going to diagnose plays more quickly? Maybe nobody. I mean, that's what happens when you're playing a guy who just hasn't played much football, and he's going to have growing pains, and I think we're seeing that. All right, Eric Mark.
Part of the concern, at least what we're hearing, is he gets washed out too easily. He gets caught up in the fray. Is his lack of size, body strength, is that part of the issue, or is it just his eyes aren't seeing what he should be seeing? It's hard to put your finger on the exact issue with him because he's third on the team in tackles.
I think I can put my finger on it. When you go back and watch the highlights of the games afterwards. Now, granted, when you're watching that, what you're usually seeing are the big plays, right? But if you watch the big plays, what you're seeing a lot from Desmond is there are times when he just is much too slow to react, and the offense he's standing there 4 or 5 yards deep still. He's maybe taken a false step the wrong way, and all of a sudden he's got an offensive lineman in his face. That's what you're seeing. I don't think you'll see that next year. When he has more experience and the game slows down for him. The question is whether he can get there before you travel to South Bend, before you travel to Autzen. Because if not, that USC still has players on that defense. They can still make plays, but it's going to be difficult when a guy in a spot like that is struggling to diagnose. And let me be fair to him. Not only is he young, but it is extremely difficult to play linebacker in college football these days because everybody's running that RPO stuff. Linemen are able to come past the line of scrimmage at least a couple of yards, and there are no calls. So whether it's a run or a pass, and you've got all kinds of misdirection, I mean, it's really difficult. But ultimately, where he's going to have to get to be the player that he wants to be, and USC needs him to be, is he's going to have to get where the great ones have been, where Lofa Tatupu and Matt Grudegood and others have been, where they seem to know the play faster than the opponent's offensive line, right? I mean, you watch that Oklahoma game, and Grutz and Tatupu, they know what Adrian Peterson is going to do before Adrian Peterson knows what he's going to, and they're not sitting back and catching blocks. They're there, boom, all over it. And so we'll just have to see how quickly he develops. But he is a great athlete, and the coaches think he has a bright future. So we shouldn't be down on him. It's just a matter of how quickly can this young guy get up to speed. And I don't think anybody knows that yet.
And you got to see plays.
Rob Ryan's.
I think you have to see plays. And so pulling him off and, okay, you're only going to get 5 snaps. Like that's not going to help him when, at least my read and seeing it is, you have to see it. Eric Gentry's seen 40,000 plays, right? I mean, the guys who, yeah, there's some natural instinct and that sort of stuff, but there's also, I've seen this. And so when you're playing teams, you've never seen before anyway, live, like what the Big Ten schedule does now, just in your second year, there's a bunch of new teams coming in, and the fact that you haven't seen it in live action, like that's tough. He's still a guy that played safety in high school, and I had questions about that coming in because how many guys have we seen, right? Yeah, he's going to play inside linebacker from us. Well, he was like a safety rover, and now you're going 6 steps closer to the line of scrimmage, which brings those offensive linemen 6 steps closer to you. They're all twice the size now, and that's tough. That's a tough thing. So I think that he's got the smarts, the physical ability, all that stuff to get there. It's one of those things, like, who you got to make a choice. Like, who do you pour snaps into? Who do you see as being, a guy that can get there? And so that's what we've seen right now is the coaches have enough trust that, yeah, he's going to get there, and that's who they're going to put snaps into right now. So but it's for sure something to watch as you keep going forward. That's a spot to watch.
This is another example of the coaching staff putting, and I hate the word expectations on a play. All we heard during the offseason, Desmond Stevens, he's that good. He's going to be able to do this. And then when you don't get the results, all of a sudden now everybody's literally combing through the sand with a fine-tooth comb saying, this is where Desmond needs to improve. He's not doing this. And we were told, this guy's going to be, the best thing since sliced bread.
Desmond Stevens has seen a lot of USC's offense in practice, and I suspect that because of that, he does recognize plays much more quickly when it's USC's offense, and because he's a good athlete, he's probably what you see in practice is probably what you're going to see from Desmond 12 months from now, where the game is slowed down and he recognizes things and he becomes a playmaker, but. We'll keep an eye on it. I don't want to be down on him. He's a young guy who's trying to figure it out, and that's exactly the position that you'd expect him to be in, and that's exactly the position that so many of these corners are in. Right? You've got guys who haven't played very much football, and not only do you have youth, but you have youth guys who weren't supposed to start, and the guys who were supposed to start are hurt, and now they're young and they're thrown out on the field. And, Lincoln Riley said, look, we're playing pretty well most of the time, but the bad plays are really bad, and we have to take that away. And I think that's a fair assessment. So Eric, let's start here. We've had at least one huge broken play deep every week. Obviously, you can't continue to have that because you're not always going to have a 3 or 4 touchdown cushion. If you're playing at Autzen, if you're playing in South Bend, you're going to be in a game that's a dogfight and you can't give up the cheap stuff. What does USC do to stop that? Because if you're the coaches, you have to stop it. So what's the answer, Eric McKinney?
Yeah, right. It's just this. I think the answer is when you're at home, everyone's got to treat this like a horror movie, and you got to scream, he's behind you. He's right behind you, right? Like that's what we've seen a little bit, a couple times where, yeah, you're in zone, but the idea of like the deepest guy in your zone, right? It's a little bit like, well, this was the area I was supposed to guard. And it's like, well, the receiver coming across the field knows that, and he's leaking behind you. And now you just have to find that guy, right? You have to know that this is where that's coming, and I have to go get on that guy. So again, it's experience, it's understanding the situation, right? The one over Braylon Conley to right at the end of the first half, like those are the situational stuff, I think, is where the young guys have to take a big step, because it's what's the only thing that can't happen right now? Ball over my head, right? They got 30 seconds or something to try to go 50-something yards and try to get points on the board. And so I think again, it's how much can you see, and how can you stop having the same thing happen, right? It happens once, that's fine. It's going to happen. But for it to happen sort of multiple times with some of the similar things that we're seeing, that's where it gets kind of tough to see over and over.
If we're thinking of the same play, Eric, Conley was in a really difficult spot, right? Because I think they're in a cover 2. So Conley I don't think he's a deep player on that. He's got the flats. Usually at 15, maybe 20 yards, that's as deep as you're going to get. But we had a young edge who's a really good football player who decided not to keep contained because he wanted the sack at the end of the half. So you let a very athletic quarterback outside, and now that zone, which you ordinarily think you're going to play for 3 seconds, you're now playing for 6. There's somebody really deep, so both deep safeties are back. I mean, that's a situation where you probably need better awareness from him under the circumstances, right? Let that guy catch the ball and come up and tackle him for a 13, 14, 15-yard gain, and you're fine. You need better recognition from him. You also need it from your edge. You need him to realize that letting Aiden Childs outside the pocket where he has all day to threaten the secondary is a mistake. And so I think that's an example where you have 2 young guys, both of whom are not recognizing the situation the way they need to. ironically, later in the game, when SC's up big, and you have a few minutes left, instead of sitting in that zone, and they decide to run man, and then you have a very experienced corner get beat on a go route.
Just
And
slip.
the
I
early
know.
touchdown, the early
He did.
touchdown is a little bit of that same stuff too, where you're running two guys sort of the same area, and USC's got two guys kind of shallow, and nobody dumps back. So other teams have coaches, right? Like they're going to design plays that work well, and sometimes you're just going to get beat. But that idea of these other coaches being able to design, or players seeing it, right, and being able to just kind of slip behind, because I don't know, it didn't feel like there were a lot of plays, because we saw early in the year, like there were busts and guys looking at each other like, no, that wasn't what, like, I didn't think you were going to do that. I didn't think it did. You didn't seem to get the same reaction from defensive guys. It just seemed more like I missed it. I missed the guy. I didn't see him. That sort of thing from this one. So it's, one of them's not worse than the other. They both give up long touchdowns, and they're both things that you got to sort of get ironed out here.
Yeah, you had one early in the game. You had a deep pass for the first touchdown. Somebody blew it. I think I know, but I wasn't in the film room. I don't know the call, so I'm not going to call him out. But you had a corner essentially running with the man who's running a post, so he vacates the deep third, and then you have the safety over there who's playing the flats. I'm pretty sure that there's not a defense where the safety plays zone in the flats and the corner plays man-to-man and runs the post, and you just hope they don't throw it to the deep third. But that's, that was a mental error by somebody. And look, this happens, but you have to cut down on those mental errors. You cannot give cheap ones. You can't give cheap ones to Michigan and Notre Dame and Oregon. You probably can't afford to give cheap ones on the road at Illinois or Nebraska either, right? You can't do it. So they're going to have to figure that out. Mark, go ahead.
I was going to ask, how obviously this is coming down to communication in the defensive backfield. They talk about it all the time. They want obnoxious communication. Eric said, scream, pretend it's a horror movie. But how much of this is also tied into that nickel spot not being solidified yet? Because that's part of the communication. You see guys, you say being handed off. Kamari Ramsey is not a nickel. That's where he's playing right now. You have Christian Pierce playing safety in his spot, which he's doing a fine job. But if he doesn't know that, hey, you've got the deep coverage part when the cornerback hands it off to you, where is the actual breakdown? Because even Bishop Fitzgerald, who's made some big plays, he's also getting beat. So does everybody know their assignments right now?
It's a good question. And if things are too complex, I mean, you want to be able to disguise coverages because that helps you play defense, and it's a problem for the quarterback. But if you're disguising coverage from yourself, at some point you have to say, okay, we have to simplify here. We have guys who are good athletes. They need to know what they're doing. And I don't know. These are things that are tough to know when you don't know what's going on in the practice field or the film room. But there is miscommunication. Kamari Ramsey can play nickel at the very least. If it's not his natural spot, this is a guy who you expect knows the defense and knows what he's supposed to be doing. So it's a concern, right? It's a concern. There are times when the corners are way too soft. There are times when guys are out of position, and USC should not have given up 31 points at Michigan State team. They shouldn't have. Aiden Child's pretty good. They have Michigan State's best receiver was held in check. It's not like Michigan State doesn't have anything. They've got a really good offensive-minded head coach, but still, that was not good.
On the 75-yarder at the end of the game, that wasn't a blown coverage. The guy just slipped and fell down, and the guy, running wide open.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, he tried to turn his head. I think his legs got tangled. That happens. He wasn't in a bad spot. That's one of the downsides of telling a guy to bump and run with a few minutes left in the game up 21, right? That stuff can happen, which is why ordinarily he wouldn't do that. But whatever. I'm not going to second guess Danton Lynn until he loses a game that's really important. Then I'll probably become unhinged like usual. Okay, guys, let's do this. Let's turn to Illinois. This is a game that we all had circled before the season as a game where we finally figure out what USC really has. So we all expected USC to be 4-0. And we thought Illinois, experienced team on the road, ranked highly. I've been saying on this show for a long time, Illinois was overrated. They weren't as good last year as their record indicated, and they weren't as good as people thought they were. But let me go the other way a little bit. They are not as bad as they showed last week. That was an absolute meltdown in every position group on both sides of the ball and in the coaching staff. It doesn't get any worse than that. Illinois is not that bad. They are much better than they showed, and they're going to be motivated to prove that because their season right now is on the line. So Eric, let's talk first about the threats that Illinois poses to USC. What should USC fans be concerned about going into this game?
There are the questions about the early kick. I don't think you completely erase the Big Ten road, time zone thing with the Purdue win. So that stuff still exists. You still have to answer those things. Now, if we just treat this like it's just an away game, that's all it is, and we're going from there, then Luke Altmaier's still good. He's still good. He's the quarterback for Illinois. Like, he can give you some Aiden Childs type stuff. He's athletic enough to get out and run. He's accurate enough to sort of pick you apart a little bit if you let him. And then Illinois is going to try to be tough. Like, their offensive line is not nearly as good as what was expected coming in when you looked at how many starts they had, how many snaps they had. But it's fine, and they got some big running backs that they will hammer you with over and over and over. And so you've got to stand up to that, and you've got to be able to keep Altmaier in the pocket, which USC did. They did a fine job of that against Aiden Childs. It wasn't perfect, but for a guy who could have hurt you a lot more, it wasn't bad. So you still want that similar. I think you got to play the way you played against Michigan State. Like, it's got to be better because I think they're probably better players from Illinois. But it's some of that same stuff. It's stop the run first. It's don't let the quarterback pick up 3rd and 9s with his legs. And I think you're okay. And that's talking, Illinois offense and what they're going to bring. I don't think there's anybody that is, oh man, this guy, this 100% healthy Nick Marsh for Michigan State. You got to tackle that guy on the edge, and he's a tough cover. I don't know if there's anybody for Illinois that gives you that, holy cow, this guy tilts the field and we got to figure him out. I think it's you play really good up front and you feel good about limiting what they can do.
Altmaier is a guy who's played a lot of football. He's if you have breakdowns, he's going to see the breakdown. If you give him easy passes, he's going to make the easy pass. If you can protect him. They haven't been able to do that very well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Altmaier is certainly the guy on that side of the ball that you say, okay, if we make mental mistakes, he will make us pay, and he will. He's a good player. On the other side of the ball, that Illinois defense was, I was going to say a grease fire last week, but that is really unfair to grease fires. It was spectacularly horrible in every way. They had a bunch of injuries in the defensive backfield. That needs to be taken into account. But they couldn't do anything. They couldn't cover anybody. They couldn't tackle anybody. They couldn't play run defense. They were horrific. But they do pose a challenge that USC hasn't really seen yet. USC has a left tackle that went out last week. We don't know if he's going to play this week. I suspect he won't, but I don't know. Lincoln Riley doesn't tell us that sort of thing. And so you're going to have two relatively young tackles playing against one of the elite edge rushers in the Big Ten. Greg, how concerned should we be about that? Because I do know that if there's an edge rusher you can't block, that poses some enormous problems for your offense.
Well, I think this goes back to the maturity level of Mayava. He's obviously shown that he can run, and he can be devastating when he does run. He's an athlete. He can get upfield in a hurry. It really depends on how disciplined this edge rusher is. He's one of the best in the Big Ten, and there's nobody debates that. So some of the things we haven't seen from SC is screens and draws and those type of things that could neutralize the edge rusher a little bit. And I'm not concerned about the edge rusher so much because I think SC is so strong running the ball and point of attack, and their offensive line, as I said a week ago, it's not that 5 guys are going to be in the NFL. It's how good they are as a unit, and right now they're really good as a unit to do what they want to do. And certainly they don't want to miss Elijah Page because he's a future NFL player, no doubt about it. But the way I look at Illinois is they're in a real bad spot, and SC has to make sure that they understand what Illinois is going to come out and do. Okay, example, it's going to be their homecoming, right? SC is the homecoming. First of all, if I'm Lincoln Riley, I just make sure my team knows that. They schedule you for homecoming. They don't schedule homecomings for losses. They do it for wins. I think that Illinois will be twice as, shall I say, has the potential to be twice as tough because they're already 0-1 in the Big Ten, right? Having lost to Indiana. And when you look at it, and I was paying attention to it this morning, if 4 teams are actually taken into the playoffs from the Big Ten, and you figure, okay, one's going to be Ohio State, another one's going to be Penn State, who's the third one going to be? Who is the third one going to be? Well, it really gets down to the 4th spot. And the 4th spot to me is Illinois, USC, Nebraska, perhaps. So right now it's like we got to get into that 4th spot. So people are thinking about us as at least the 4th spot. Obviously, Illinois they're going to have that home crowd backing them. I don't think the home crowd is going to be as difficult for SC to deal with, but they will be motivating for Illinois on both sides of the ball. They will do that. SC has got to do what they ended up doing against Michigan State, was getting out to a lead and in a position that there's some sort of pressure on Illinois. And I think the longer SC's in the lead, the more pressure it's going to be on Illinois, especially when it comes to that 4th quarter, because I think SC has the confidence and the knowledge to run the ball and possess it. And Illinois will be, really searching to save their season, which is a lot different than just a horrible loss at Indiana. That's a horrible loss, but we got a chance to get back. And so hopefully SC can take advantage of it. They have to take advantage of it. They got to make Illinois think that they're capable of losing 63-7 or 63-10 to USC. It won't happen that way, but they have to put Illinois back in a set that they definitely don't want to go back to.
Yeah, look, Illinois is going to be emotionally fragile in this one. What happened to them last Saturday was not just a loss. It wasn't just a bad loss. This is the biggest game in the recent history of this program. For a team that thought they had a legitimate chance to make the playoff, they probably believed even better than that. And they got absolutely humiliated and laughed at. Essentially laughed at by Kurt Zignetti, essentially laughed at by everybody in the media, everybody on social media, and probably a bunch of people in their classes, if they go to classes. That is a really difficult thing to take. And that tells me 2 things. One is they are going to come out for this game sky high, because if they can come out and beat a ranked USC team, then it puts that in the past. It gets their season back on track. It gets them their self-respect back. They are going to be sky high for this one. But they're fragile. And I'm telling you, I played on teams like this where you get humiliated and you come out the next week and you're ready to go and turn around everything, and you see a couple of the same mistakes and you get down 14 points and now the finger pointing starts. Guys are no longer willing to trust the guy next to them, so they try to be Superman and make every play, and things just fall apart. USC needs to come out strong in the first quarter. If USC comes out strong in the first quarter, Illinois is in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Hey, Mark, do we have any idea how many of those defensive backs are coming back for Illinois this week?
They're starting to trickle back in. The one they really miss that they really need is Xavier Scott. I think he's the leader of that secondary back there. They're not.
And I think he's out, right? I think we know he's done.
Yeah. So unless they, I think they were missing 6 out of their top 7 from this past game. They're going to get a couple of them back. Whether or not they're going to be impactful enough to, to match up with USC's skill guys, we'll find out, I guess, Saturday. But the player that did not show up against Indiana, and it's the one they need, that we talk about it all the time. If you want your cornerbacks, your secondary to look like they're All-Americans, get a pass rush going. Their best guy was essentially non-existent against Indiana. I think he had a bagel for the game. I know he had 0 sacks. I don't know exactly how many tackles he had, but he wasn't an impact at all. He wasn't affecting the game. And if USC can neutralize Gabe Jacas the same way Indiana did, I mean, they gave us the blueprint. To your point, they're going to have a lot of problems stopping USC. They just have to survive that initial emotional, coming out of the gate type of thing. Homecoming, the crowd's going to be jacked up. Fox is going to be there for their big noon game. All that energy, all that excitement's going to be there. If USC has the lead or, tied at the end of the first quarter, like you said, that noose starts to tighten up a little bit. Everything gets magnified. As long as USC doesn't get called for an unusual amount of penalties, keeping Illinois into the game, I think they'll be fine. But yeah, if they can't cover in the back half of their defense, that's going to be a problem because they have to now also account for USC's running game. And if Lincoln Riley can keep you off balance with his play calling, Illinois won a lot of close games last year. We'll see if they're going to be able to replicate that this year. Right now, the last thing everybody remembers, belt to ass, 63-10.
Yeah. All right, guys, in just a minute, we'll go through and do our predictions for the week. Is there anything else that we should talk about when it comes to this Illinois matchup Saturday that we haven't touched?
Well, I think the game, since we'll be getting to this point anyway, I think the game is going to be decided whose corners play the best. Is it SC's corners or is it going to be Illinois' corners? Because I think that we know that SC has work to do on the corners, and I think Illinois has work to do on the corners, and whose corners actually, at least as of today, whoever plays better probably has put their team in a much better position to win.
All right.
See, I disagree. I think it's the offensive line is going to make the difference. Indiana sacked Illinois' quarterback 7 times last week. Those are USC type of numbers.
And Duke got to him 4 times.
Right.
And
I don't think Illinois' offensive line is really good, very good this year. So that's going to be the difference, in my opinion, Greg.
all right.
Mark, I agree with your opinion.
Well, thank you.
You guys are
We're going to go get a room right now.
You're so good. Poor guy.
all right, Eric, you go first. Give me your prediction for Saturday.
Yeah, I think, you first bring up the Illinois corner being out, some stuff going on in the defensive backfield, and throw it all over the place. I think USC goes like full Big Ten on this. I think it's run game based. I think it's defensive line on the other side that causes some problems, and I think that they get it done. Now, I'd be surprised if it's a blowout. I mean, they didn't blow out Purdue, right? So like it's tough for me to get all the way over the hump and say, it's 25-point win, something like that. But 35-24. Something like that, something that's comfortable enough on the road against a ranked team. I obviously don't think they'll be ranked going forward after that. But for the game that preseason was like, this is the make or break. This is it. This is what tells the tale of the year. I don't know how many people would have sat here on a Wednesday before that game and said, offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, USC on all three of them right now, the way those groups are playing. And if you can check those three boxes going into a game or feel good about it, right, you win a lot of them. You win a lot of them if you have the edge on those three. And I think that's where we are right now based on what we've seen so far from both teams.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, I see this game being kind of loose early in the game, so I'm going to go with a little bit of a higher pick than Eric. I got USC winning, but I think there's going to be more points scored, so I'm going to say USC 40, and we'll go Illinois 30.
Greg Katz.
Well, I hope Illinois doesn't score 30, but I think it's possible. I don't think SC's played its best game of the season yet. I think if they put it all together, it's going to be they're really going to control the game big time. I think that SC understands what they have to do. I still think this is the biggest game of the year because I think this is the best team they've played. And I think that sometimes, I remember when SC lost to Notre Dame way back, decades, generations ago. I think it was, 1965, 66? They lost 66-0 or something at the Coliseum to Notre Dame, and McKay said, that'll never happen again, which it didn't really. And I think that SC has to go in there and say, look, you know what, it's not about Illinois, which that's how they'll preach it. They'll say, it's about us, which is true. And I think if SC does what they're supposed to, I think they're going to win. But I think that I want to say something like 35 or 38 to maybe 24, maybe as low as 20, maybe 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. I can see it that way. But like all games, it depends on the turnovers and what you do with those turnovers.
Yeah. Coaches say all the time, you're never as good as you look like when you get a big win. You're never as bad as you look after a bad loss. And that's true. Illinois is not as bad as they looked Saturday. Saturday, they looked worse than UCLA. They're not that bad. But when the whole structure collapses the way it did, you had some major structural problems. And I'm not sure a week is going to be enough time to fix that. USC's offense is going to move the ball all day long. They're going to have big plays. They're going to move the ball. The question for USC is, are you going to have the critical mistakes that end drives, right? Are you going to have turnovers? Are you going to have bad penalties? Are you going to settle for 3? Because if so, you can have 500 yards offense and still score 30 points. And if they score 30 points, this game's going to be close. Illinois' offense has gigantic offensive line problems. They don't run the ball particularly well, and they can't protect their good quarterback. USC's defensive line is going to get sacks, and they're going to get tackles for loss. But with USC, we know that it only takes 1 breakdown to give up 7, and they do it enough that I'm not ready to predict that that's over. USC is going to give up some big plays in this game. They're going to give up some points. They do it every week, even when they shouldn't. I think I see a score along the same lines that Greg does. I think 38-24, 41-24. I think that's probably where it ends up. It will be closer than I want it to be. It will be closer than it should be because USC is better than Illinois. They're better. They're far better in the trenches than Illinois is. Their skill position talent is far better. And other than an edge rusher, I like USC's talent in the back 7. I'd rather have Bishop Fitzgerald and I'd rather have Eric Gentry than the guys they have. USC's better, and they're on a roll. USC should win this game unless they choose this week to collapse the way Illinois collapsed last week, which I don't think will happen. So 38-24 Trojans, 5-0, and sets up an absolute monster clash at the Coliseum after that. I mean, especially if Michigan wins out before that game, a one-loss ranked Michigan, an undefeated ranked USC at the Coliseum with playoff implications of the whole world watching will be spectacular. So just don't screw it up this week, guys.
And don't make it a 9:00 a.m. kickoff either.
I don't think they're going to make it 9 a.m. But who knows? Who knows? And who knows what special officiating crew they'll send to the Coliseum that week. All right, guys. Anything else we should talk about? I think we're done. Hey, join us at WeAreSC.com. Lots of stuff going on. And message boards are fun, lots of good articles. We're getting in the heart of the season. If you thought about joining, this is the time to do it. Okay, enjoy the game Saturday. Wake up early. And next week we'll be here to celebrate 5-0. Until then, fight on, everybody.